Welcome back. In this video, we will discuss markup and margin. The markup ratio expresses the profit as a percent of the cost. This shows how much customers pay more than the cost of the product. The margin ratio expresses the profit margin as a percent of the price. This shows how much profit was retained from sales after costs are paid. Let's take a look at an example involving a store that wants to charge a 20% markup instead of its current 25% markup. The current selling price for its product is $50 per unit. Determine the price it must charge instead in order to yield the 25% markup it desires. To solve this example, we will need to use the following formula. For the markup ratio, we must first determine the cost, and then we can determine the new price. By plugging in the current 25% markup and $50 selling price, we can isolate for the cost in this example, which is $40. To determine the new price, we will once again use this formula, but instead use the new markup of 20% and the cost that we determined of $40 to isolate for the ideal price of $48. Now, let's take a look at an example that involves the margin. Suppose a store sells a product that costs $60 at a 30% markup. What is the current margin the store is generating, and what selling price must they charge in order to yield a 40% margin? By multiplying the cost of the product by 1 plus the markup, we can determine that the selling price of the product is $78. Now we can determine that the current margin is $78 minus $60 over $78, giving us 23.08%. To determine the new ideal selling price, we need to use the margin formula where the 40% margin equals the ideal price minus the cost of 60 divided by the ideal price. We can now algebraically isolate for the ideal price, which in our situation is $100. In conclusion, the examples we've looked at rely on the following relationship, where the selling price equals the cost multiplied by 1 plus the markup ratio, and also equals the cost plus the margin in dollars. The markup ratio, shown by this formula, provides us with information on how much more customers paid above the cost, while the margin, expressed by this formula, tells us how much of the sales were retained as profits after costs are paid for.